A nation broken, the fall of the revolution, the dream lay shattered. The Continental Army, once brimming with hope, was no more. Defeated, they surrendered to the British Empire. The year is 1783. The revolution had failed. The British wasted no time in asserting their dominance. Their grip tightened, choking the spirit of liberty, the cold, hard reality of subjugation. The spectacle of defeat, public trials and executions. The British made an example of the revolution's leaders. Public trials, mere formalities were held, their crimes, daring to dream of a nation free from tyranny.
Stripped of my rank and dignity, paraded through the streets in chains.
George Washington faced a public trial for treason. The trial, a mere formality, culminated in a swift conviction. He was publicly executed, hanged before a crowd of loyal subjects and curious onlookers. Families who dared to show any sign of mourning were quickly rounded up, their homes raided and families torn apart. Thomas Jefferson, imprisoned in a filthy, overcrowded dungeon, endured constant physical punishment. The British authorities utilized whippings and beatings as a means of punishment and control, instilling dread in other prisoners. Benjamin Franklin, captured while attempting to negotiate with France, faced psychological torture, kept in solitary confinement, deprived of light and sound, his spirit slowly eroding. Instruments of terror, the machinery of repression. The British, having crushed the revolution, set about ensuring such an uprising would never occur again. They established a reign of terror, employing brutal tactics to maintain control over the colonies. Their tools were fear and pain, their instruments of repression as varied as they were cruel.
The cat o' nine tails, a whip with 9 knotted cords, is a favorite instrument of punishment. Each lash tears through flesh, leaving behind a bloody tapestry of pain. The screams of the punished, echoing through the streets, serve as a grim warning to any who contemplate defiance.
For lesser offenses, there was the pillory, a device that locked the head and hands, exposing the victim to public humiliation and abuse. The jeering crowds, often encouraged by British soldiers, became willing participants in the spectacle of suffering. They would throw rotten food and spit upon the humiliated, adding to their torment. Rebels and suspected sympathizers are often restrained and subjected to water torture, where they are forced to experience the sensation of drowning. The thumbscrew, a device designed to crush fingers, was another favored method of inflicting pain. The intense pressure would fracture bones, causing excruciating pain and long-term damage. Bruising and damage to the skin and soft tissues would result in swelling, bleeding, and potential infection. Extended use of the thumbscrew could disrupt nerve function, leading to numbness, tingling, or even permanent loss of sensation. The force applied could dislocate finger joints, causing severe pain and affecting mobility for life. The psychological impact of such torture was profound, instilling fear and anxiety that compounded the physical suffering, ensuring the British grip on the colonies remained unchallenged. Living in the shadow of the gallows, fear as a weapon. Fear became the lifeblood of the colonies, seeping into every crack and crevice of society. It was a suffocating presence, a constant reminder of the ever-watching eyes of the British. The public executions, the whippings, the brandings. They were not mere punishments. They were calculated acts of terror designed to crush the spirit of the people. Gone were the lively debates at the town square, replaced by a stifling silence. Neighbors, once eager to lend a helping hand, now averted their gazes, afraid to even make eye contact. Trust evaporated, replaced by suspicion. The British had sown the seeds of paranoia, turning neighbor against neighbor. Children, once full of life and laughter, now played games of war, mimicking the brutal tactics of the British. Their toys were no longer wooden swords and makeshift drums, but miniature gallows and toy whips. The British, having effectively silenced any open dissent, turned their attention to eradicating any lingering embers of rebellion. They understood that true control required more than brute force. It demanded the subjugation of the mind. And so they set about dismantling the very fabric of the colonial society. Education, once considered a cornerstone of colonial life, became tightly controlled. Schools were transformed into institutions of indoctrination, their curriculums rewritten to glorify the British Empire and demonize the revolution. Children were taught to view their own history through the distorted lens of British propaganda, their minds molded to accept their place as subservient subjects. Freedom of the press, a cornerstone of democracy, was extinguished. Newspapers, once vibrant platforms for debate and dissent, were either shuttered or forced to print pro-British propaganda. Editors who dared to defy the censors were met with swift and brutal retribution. The flow of information was effectively dammed, leaving the colonists vulnerable to manipulation and misinformation. Yet, even in the face of such overwhelming oppression, the spirit of defiance, though battered and bruised, refused to be extinguished. In hushed tones, in the privacy of their homes, behind closed doors and shuttered windows, the embers of rebellion still smouldered. The dream of liberty, once so boldly proclaimed, was kept alive in whispers and secret meetings. The Sons of Liberty, once a powerful force in the fight for independence, were now a shadow of their former selves.
But they were not gone. They met in secret, their numbers dwindling, their faces hidden in the shadows. They passed along messages, whispered words of hope, and kept alive the memory of the revolution. New groups emerged from the ashes of defeat, fueled by a burning desire for freedom. They called themselves the Whisperers, the hidden, the unbroken. They were farmers and blacksmiths, shopkeepers and teachers, ordinary men and women united by their extraordinary courage.
The British, ever vigilant, were not oblivious to the whispers of dissent. They had anticipated resistance, expected it, and were prepared to crush it with an iron fist. They had established a network of informants, their eyes and ears spread throughout the colonies, always watching, always listening. The hammer blow came swiftly and brutally. Raids were conducted in the dead of night, homes were ransacked, families torn apart. Those suspected of even the slightest hint of rebellion were arrested, imprisoned without trial, their fates uncertain. The message was clear: dissent would not be tolerated. The Sons of Liberty, once a symbol of colonial resistance, were systematically dismantled. Their leaders were captured, tortured, and executed. Section 8. A Legacy of Sorrow, the Lost Generation. Years turned into decades, and the colonies, once vibrant and full of life, now bore the scars of defeat. The dream of liberty, once so brightly held, had faded into a distant memory, a bittersweet tale whispered by grandparents to their grandchildren. A generation had come of age under the yoke of British oppression, their spirits crushed, their dreams deferred. The children born after the revolution inherited a world shrouded in fear and silence. They learned to walk with their heads down, their eyes averted from the ever-present gaze of British authority. They were taught to accept their place as subservient subjects, to never question, never challenge the established order. The fire of rebellion, once so fiercely burning, had been reduced to embers, hidden deep within the hearts of the oppressed. But it was not extinguished. Section 9. Indelible Scars, the Enduring Impact of Defeat. The colonies, once a beacon of hope, were now a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the fragility of freedom. The British victory reshaped society, leaving behind fear, resentment, and simmering rebellion. Economic vitality was gone, replaced by a system enriching the British Empire at the colonists' expense. The social fabric of the colonies was irrevocably torn. Section 10. A World Without America: Global Consequences. The ripple effects of the failed American Revolution extended far beyond the shores of the colonies. The world watched in dismay as the beacon of liberty, once so brightly shining, was extinguished. The consequences of this defeat would resonate for generations to come. In France, where the American Revolution had ignited sparks of revolution, the failure of the American cause dealt a severe blow to the burgeoning movement for democratic reform. The French monarchy, emboldened by the British victory, tightened its grip on power, crushing dissent and delaying the inevitable revolution. Across Europe, the flame of liberty, once fanned by the American example, flickered and dimmed. Monarchs and despots, emboldened by the British victory, consolidated their power, crushing any hint of rebellion or reform. The world, it seemed, was entering a new dark age, an era of tyranny and oppression. Section 11. A glimmer in the darkness, hope endures. Despite the bleak reality of life under British rule, a glimmer of hope remained. The human spirit, it seemed, could not be entirely extinguished. In hushed whispers, in secret gatherings, the dream of liberty persisted. The stories of the founding fathers, though suppressed, were passed down from generation to generation, keeping the flame of resistance alive. The British, despite their best efforts, could not control every thought, every whisper of dissent. The ideals of liberty, equality, and self-determination, once so powerfully articulated, had taken root in the hearts and minds of the people. They would not be so easily eradicated. The struggle for freedom, though seemingly lost, was far from over. It would continue, albeit in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to emerge once more.